All right, everybody, welcome. It is 12:30 on a rainy Wednesday. It is so nice to see you or your icons or your dogs or whatever you have on your screen right now. It's a nice rainy Wednesday and my garden's loving it. Thanks for taking a little bit of time to join us today. I've invited Ashley back this week because we just started last week touching on some workflow tips, and I thought it would be good for this week to continue like really digging into like workflow, like how do we make this easier? How do we manage all of this stuff that's coming at us? So I just wanted to take some time and I think Ashley's got like a lot of great ideas. And she's been dealing with this a lot more specifically than I have as a specialist. She has thousands of posts flying all around. And so she is going to be sharing some of the ways that she likes to manage some of her workflow. And again, this won't answer every question, and everyone has a different way they're doing it, a different circumstance, but let's use this forum as a place to share some ideas and then start some conversations. And if we don't get towards everyone's question, we can finish that up and follow up in person later. Well, not in person, you know what I mean, individually. So I am going to hand it over to Ashley. She's got a bunch of great stuff to share. As always, this will be recorded and posted on losdlogic.org, and you can see all the Wednesday workshops there. So with that being said, I'm going to stop presenting over here, and I'm going to let Ashley take it away.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming back, or if it's your first time here, welcome. I'm going to just show you a few things that work for me or some ideas to try out. Feel free to like add any comments as we're going with any questions. Crystal will be kind of monitoring that as we go also. So here's just some tips and things. To start off, hopefully you can see my screen here. Is this the right, can you see my screen? Like the post?
Yes.
Kind of. Okay. So one kind of overarching thing that I want to talk about first is ways to share and post content. So thinking about what you want students to get from it is the beginning part of it. So I always try to think, do I want students to respond? And if I don't need students to respond, it can kind of go in two different ways. So if I just want to share a video of something, or it's kind of an update for me, I want to share that as an announcement. So instead of having to create an activity for it, I would just send it as an announcement. Another way I could do that if I don't necessarily need students to respond to it is to post to the journal. You can tag everybody in your class on the journal page. Something to keep in mind for that, though, is that any student is able to comment on that, and then other kids see other comments. So anyone who is tagged on a post will be able to see any comments that are on that post. So that's something to keep in mind. Another kind of segue or kind of offshoot from this is if you want to communicate with one student in particular, I recommend posting to that student's journal, because then they can see what you posted, whether that was a note or a video to them, and then they can comment back on that too. And then kind of shifting back over here, if you do want students to respond to it, then post it as an activity. I've just seen kind of to help with the workflow of it, if you're posting things as an activity where you don't necessarily need a response, either it just sits in that student's feed until it's archived, and that can be annoying or frustrating for families to like have this little icon there to show that they have activities to respond to when they don't actually need it. And also it's more work for us as teachers if they like click and say, okay, did it, or finish this one, when they actually didn't need to respond to it. So that's something to keep in mind for different ways to share and post content for that. Kind of shifting gears here. If there's any questions, type them in there and let me know. Kind of shifting over here, I want to talk a little bit more about folders, because that is one way that I like to stay organized. When you're thinking about folders, a couple thoughts. The reason why I really like folders to start off is how I approve their posts. I like to go through, once I assign the activity, and I'll go through those details in a second, I like to sort them out by the folder, because I like to think about like just grammar as one thing, or just reading fluency, and go through and see all the posts that had to do with reading fluency, go through and see all their posts that had to do with the fractions activity, kind of going with that. And so that's why I really like folders, is by how I like to approve them. If you like to look at like just the feed of the timeline of when they came in, then folders may not be as important for you. It might be though that somebody turned in a reading fluency assignment, and then the grammar, and then the social studies. And so you're kind of bouncing through all those in a timeline versus by subject. So you can kind of think about what works for you. If you are wanting to do folders, just by creating a new folder, you click on that folder icon. I can link to a visual with that. But when you assign an activity, it's really important to assign it to the folder right away. And I have the visual here on how to do it. So when you are in that your assign activity, you'll click edit students folders and skills, and then click on the folders one, and then click whichever folder it goes to, and then a green check. There's I can't remember, I want to say maybe 10 folders. I don't know if Chris, you know the answer, how many you can have. So you can be fairly specific on how many different ones that you could have for it. Instead of just ELA, you could have one that's all about reading fluency, one that's with grammar, one that's with your literature circles, or however you're doing it. And then, so this is my favorite part, when you are going through, let's say students have all gone through there and done their activities for the day, or whoever's responded. Then when you're going to go through to approve them, at the bottom, this is number 2 on here, you're going to check unapproved items by folder. So you'll go through at the bottom and click review for any of those unapproved posts. Instead of just going through all those unapproved posts, then you can sort it by folder by clicking the unapproved items. Over on the side on the right, you'll see the folder tab. You click there, and then all the ones that are with whichever folder you chose will show up from there. So then my next tip to go along with that is, let's say you have 17 in this literacy lesson that you just sent. So you're looking through all 17. I like to go through and comment or like on each one. And then at the very end on the bottom, it says approve all 17. So instead of like clicking one and waiting for it to kind of clear out, I go through and do all of them, just going down the line, and then say approve all at the bottom. Other ways that you could, and I'm sure you've already seen this by now, is looking at the activity itself. When you pull up that activity, you'll see the grid view of all the students. I find that that takes me longer to go through and to approve them, but I do like to check that spot to see who has or hasn't submitted the work. I find though it takes longer to actually click through and look at each one that way if I'm really trying to look at them, what's been completed, but it's a good way to kind of see where kids are at, how many kids have responded, who hasn't responded, looking at it from there. I feel like that's so fast.
No, I just want to make sure that that I'm getting it here. So you like to use the folders, and if you use folders and assign the activity to the folder right away, then that means that when you go in and you click the red bar, and then you like click the folder to the side in the unapproved items, then it actually sorts it. And so you can just go through and just click that folder, that unapproved items, and you just go through and put all your comments on. And then at the bottom, you said just click approve all instead of having to click approve all like 30 times, right?
Exactly. Yes. Okay. So that reminded me of another thing too. So if you assign an activity and you don't put it into the folder right away, there's not an easy way to go back and do it. You'd have to do each response individually. And then it kind of defeats the purpose of using a folder, the simplicity of using the folder to help stay organized, to help with those approving and commenting. Another reason though I do like folders, so well, first of all, definitely recommend putting it in that folder when you're assigning it, kind of just get in the habit of doing that. I know I would forget sometimes. I'm like, oh, I wanted it in the reading fluency folder, but just having to go back through. And sometimes I'm like, it's not worth it to go back and put it in a folder. Sometimes I would, depends on what it was. So that's the number one reason why I like folders. Some other things too, as the year went on, especially last year I was teaching 3rd grade, I wanted to go back through and just look at students' reading fluency. So I could click on the reading fluency folder, pull up ones from way back in the early on in the year and compare that to something that they did later in the spring. So that's another reason why I like folders. That might not be something that you're looking at so much this year, but it's something to keep in mind for the future with that. Okay, moving on here. So I'm gonna, this kind of just goes along with it too. So you have those different options: approve, send back, or delete. When you're approving it, once again, I like to go through and do that either like or comment right away. Anytime I send something back, I always add a comment to it to say, hey, you did a great job with this. Will you go back and change this part of it? So adding that comment to send back, they'll be able to see that when it comes back to them, it'll be in that draft mode where it'll say edit, and they'll be able to click edit and then change and adjust anything to it. And then when I delete things, I like to either post separately to the child's journal on why something was deleted. So it's important, I think, to have that conversation with students so they're not just repeating the same mistake over or the same thing happening. Ideally, when this has happened in the past, I would be having that conversation in face-to-face in person. But now I think posting to the child's journal or even emailing home, if it's something that you need to make sure you communicate directly to families about why you deleted something. Otherwise, remember that any families that are connected to their child will see anything that you post to their journal. So if I wanted to write a note to a student, I could just say, post student work. Maybe I'm going to press note, type something up, saying something to a child, or even do a video recording. And then I can just tag the ones that I want to, do the green check, and goes to that child's journal. They'll see it next time they go into Seesaw, they'll see that post on there, and then the parents will get a notification that someone posted to their journal, their child's journal.
So just to clarify,
okay, one other thing I wanted to mention here, you want to jump in?
Yeah, just to clarify, when you're looking at that post, just want to make sure that I got this. There are 3 options. You can either approve it and then it just gets sent to the journal and the parents right away, or you can send it back, use that yellow button, that send back thing, and that's new for Seesaw for Schools. So if you were using the free version before, this is a new feature, which is really awesome that we're getting now with our Seesaw for Schools subscription. And that allows you to put that comment on there, send it back to the kid in draft, and it'll pop back up into their activity feed. Is that correct? Oh, okay.
It'll be on their journal feed.
Okay.
So it'll be like that first page when they come up. It'll also show
and then
as a
delete
activity.
will delete it, and they'll have to completely start over from the beginning if they want to do it over, right? Yeah, okay, all right. Just wanted to check. Thanks.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. Something I've been talking a little bit with teachers too. Sometimes they'll delete something that somebody did and then want students to respond again. So maybe they didn't do it as expected or however it was, so they'll delete it. And then once you delete an activity, when the students go back into their activity feed, it'll show up there as if they never did it. So it'll still have that add response again, instead of having to do that extra step to find it in like the old completed activities where it says respond again. So that's something to think about too. So if you do want kids to start over with it, if you delete it, kind of communicate with them. Communicate with them that you deleted it, and then it's still there for them to respond, where they can just press the add response. One more way to be looking at posts and activities is by checking the calendar view. When you first go on the journal page, you'll see this little icon. The default is to see it listed in those lines where it's just kind of a timeline of it. If you click the calendar part, you'll see a calendar and see how many posts were posted on each day. And then you can click on that and see which ones were posted by day. So you can use that calendar. I personally don't use this that much. The only time I really used it last year in third grade was on a day when I had a sub. I assigned a mystery science activity in Seesaw, and I wanted to be able to see who completed it on that one day when the sub was here versus who didn't on that day. But other than that, I don't really have a big use for the calendar view. I don't know if you want to be able to kind of see, you could look at it and see which days are you're getting the most responses. So if you're posting Tuesday through Friday and say, wow, I'm getting most kids are most active on Wednesdays because I have the most posts went on there. You could use it for that. Otherwise, kind of just check it out and see if it's something that would be useful for you. Okay, one more idea that I have. I'm hearing a lot from teachers that like trying to comment and respond and like to 3+ posts per day, Tuesday through Friday is a lot. So I have another idea that I sent or shared with the staff at Oak Creek. And something to think about is a way to combine multiple activities or assignments, but just in one activity. So these were just a couple quick ones that I made. You can kind of see it. Let me see if I can make this bigger a little bit. So instead of needing multiple responses, so trying to widen the lens a little bit. So instead of let's say if you didn't need a Seesaw activity for math for that day, maybe it was to watch a lesson, and then do the IXL practice that goes along with it, and not necessarily manipulating anything in Seesaw. Then you could do something like this. So what it is, I'm just going to make one of these bigger to kind of see it. So this would be all in one activity in Seesaw, but they would have their reading lesson. So like number 1, they would click the link to watch their Haggerty lesson, and then to read your Just Right book outside. Obviously not today, but on a different day, and read for 15 minutes of your Just Right book or whatever you wanted them to do. Then for math, trying to think about what you're working on in math, write down all the ways to make 10, or work on your multiplication facts, however you want to do it there. Social studies, they're working on mapping, make a map of somewhere in your home or outside. And then a different kind of one, what can you do to make someone smile today? So you could have this, a couple different ideas that I had for this was having this template, and then they could have little check boxes and they are just checking off those things in their add response part. I've also made one as an example to show on different pages. So they have this to view in the first part of the activity. And then let's say there's 3 different pages in the response part. So they have their reading, they take a picture of their Just Right book. On the math one, take a picture of all the ways you wrote down to add 10, to make 10. On the third one, take a picture of the map that you made, and kind of sharing that. So I was trying to think about a way to help with that workflow, because as students are doing this, they can press save draft and always come back to it. So then as a teacher, when you're looking through, instead of having 3 posts per kid, it would be that you have 1 post per kid, and you still might have to look through multiple pages, but just the time to look through that, do 1 comment on all of it versus multiple comments on multiple posts. It was kind of this idea. And this might not be something that works for your class. It might be something, I named it Friday Fun because I was like, maybe this is a good Friday one. And then you're spending less time on Friday responding to activities and more time planning for the next week, if that's something that would work. So that's kind of an idea I have to try and simplify posts a little bit. It might be, though, that you still have students responding to math on this one, but at least it would all be together and have a less to approve and comment on. One other thought about this is it throws all the folders out the window because it'd be multiple subjects kind of in one thing. But if this is what helps you kind of stay organized with it, then this is an idea.
So Ashley, that's an amazing idea. I see that you are using Google Slides as a way to create like a background or a template for your activities, correct?
That is correct. So these are in Google Slides. When I'm doing this, a little bit of the technical part here is that I'll make the slides all in one Google Slideshow. So I'll make the template that I want them to click on with links in Google Slides, and then all the templates that go with it. So like for this Friday, this other one I made, I'm just gonna move this one over. like this one, I made it into a checklist. So I wanted them to just go through and do each of these and put a little check on them after they did it on their ad response part. And so then I repeated this, just took out the links because they didn't need that in the template part for student response. And the something to keep in mind that I'm finding though is that I ended up making a copy of this slide and then deleting those template ones and only had this one as my multimedia example or instructions, and then pulled up my Google Slides as the template for student response. So I ended up kind of splitting them to show it as the one with the active links for my multimedia example and instructions, and then the one where the kids respond to for the template for student response.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, just wanted to like pull some of these things out here, like that we have all these tools and we can be using them together. And if you're curious about some of those activity creation tips, there are a bunch of videos on losdlogic.org that you can check out. We talked about it last week. There's more videos there that you can check out. And there's just lots of ways to kind of layer your activities and make them a little bit deeper. Yeah, right now, so we've gone about 20 minutes. I know, it just flew right by. We talked about the first thing is, do you want to actually have an activity like to give feedback on, or should you just use an announcement to just send some stuff out to kids? And right there, that will cut down on your feedback time. We talked about folders and how folders help you kind of sort through your feeds. We talked about the different calendar views. We talked about your workflows for like returning it, for sending back an assignment so they can send it back to you. Yeah, there's a lot there. Or we thought about, instead of doing an activity for every little thing, combining multiple activities into one activity, like we just talked about. And yeah, so lots of really good ideas there for trying to kind of compress, compact, simplify your workflow a little bit in Seesaw. Does this bring up any questions for anybody? As long as you got me and Ashley here. If there's questions, make sure you just pop them in the chat and we'll take a minute to kind of respond to some of those things. Anything that wasn't clear, anything you'd like to know more about, just let us know. We can wait.
While we're waiting, I have one more thought that just came to mind too. So something that I've heard from families is like, if they're looking at the Seesaw Family app, their view is only things that have been posted to their child's journal. So looking at the Seesaw Family app, they're not looking at what all the activities are that have not been completed. So I've kind of two thoughts for this. Besides having that conversation and sitting next to their child and being able to talk it out and go over what their assignments are, you could also take that same template that you use in, let's say, like for the Friday fun one that I showed. If you're doing something like that, you could take that same template and share it as an announcement. So then families could see, and you can send it either to students or families, send it to families as an announcement. So then they can see what all the assignments are for the day. So if you're hearing something like, my families want to know, like they want to see what all the activities are, you could kind of whip that in from slides or however, or even in a doc, and share that as an announcement. So then all the families can be on the same page with their child and say, hey, I see that you were supposed to do 15 minutes of IXL. Have you got that done? Okay, great. Okay, have you read your Just Right book for 20 minutes? Okay, great. Okay, now let's hop over and do this part, you know? And so I think it adds that layer that some families are wanting to be able to see what their activities are for the day.
I think that's a great idea. I think that we need to remember that parents, through the parent app, only get to see what the students have completed. And so it's not ideal, you know, in that way, because they need to be able to know what their kids are working on. And so far I've just been, you know, take a look over the kids' shoulders. But if you have your activities and they're all on Google Slides, you could just like push that out in an announcement to your family so they kind of get a heads up as to what's coming this week. That's a great idea. I'm actually going to have a meeting with Seesaw on Monday just to talk about some of the things that we have been experiencing and some of the features that we would like. So they are actively communicating with us to say like, hey, how's it going? What's up? And that's one of the things I'm going to talk about, is that it'd be really nice for parents to at least have like a preview of the activities feed or something. But until that happens, it's a good thing to keep that in mind and be able to be like, yeah, here's what we're doing this week, and just send it in as an announcement to all families, which just takes, you know, a couple seconds. So that's great. Other questions? This will we be emailing this out? Yes, I put it in the chat. This video will be on losdlogic.org, and if you click on that, there on the first page, it's Wednesday workshops, and then there are subsequent pages for like Seesaw and Google Meet and Google Classroom and what else? Sharing videos, recording videos, all of that. So that's a great resource for all the things that you need, and you just go back and check it out any other time. Last few minutes here. Any other questions about any of these workflow tips, strategies, things you're wondering about? Okay. Well, we'll stick around here for the next couple minutes, but you know who we are. I'm Chris Hesselbein. That's Ashley Spear. You can email us with your questions. We will definitely work with you and get to the bottom of your issue. We'll figure out some way to figure it out. How's that? And just let us know. We'd love to work with you. So we'll stick around. If you got to get going, get going. Enjoy the rain, and we'll see you next time. Otherwise, we'll stick around and answer questions.